Yes, guys, welcome back to the Spurs-related YouTube channel. I'm on my own today, and I'm going to try and go over what happened in that defeat to Bayern Munich yesterday, the 4-0 loss in our final friendly of pre-season, and go over basically what happened, why we got beat, and what seriously needs to change. So as I said, 4-0 loss at Bayern Munich yesterday was really, really disappointing. We had 6 shots in the game, 2 of which were on target, and neither of which were actually great chances, both of which were Charlison from just outside the area. It was a pretty dismal performance, which is a shame going to the start of a new season and feeling negative about it all and slightly deflated. But there's still hope. There's still hope. It's a long season. There's a lot to go. So let's dissect what really happened. I'm going to start with probably the brightest spark of yesterday, and that was Kudus. On a slightly more positive note, Mohamed Kudus was really exciting. Again, I've been really impressed with him throughout pre-season. He's picking up the ball. He's driving with it. He looks to be the only one at the moment in that attack that's doing anything. He's constantly trying different things. He works unbelievably hard defensively as well. He's going to be a mainstay of this Tottenham team this season, if we didn't know that already, but he definitely is. He's going to be a big part of this Tottenham team. He's going to be very exciting. We've obviously lost Son this week, who is not only someone that chips in with a lot of contributions, but is also a bit of a superstar. And I think Mohamed Kudus is possibly the next on the line. I think the guy's brilliant, and I've been really excited. I'm really pleased with how he's done over pre-season. Along with him as well, I thought Rodrygo Bentancur was very good yesterday. Thomas Frank said the other day that he's a big part of his plans. He mentioned him in his first ever interview, and that's really exciting. I'm a big Bentancur fan. I've made that clear a number of times on this channel. I love Bentancur. I think he's great, and I think we were starting at the back end of last year to see him again like what he was before that ACL injury. But now he's looking a lot better again in that double pivot when he's got cover with him as well. He's starting to look like a top midfielder again, and that's really, really exciting. So Kudus, Bentancur, both very, very positive yesterday. I thought, despite the result, despite everything, I thought they were both shining lights in what was a really poor day for Tottenham. But we lost 4-0, so it's time to probably look at some more negative parts of yesterday and properly dissect those parts, because there's some big issues at Tottenham and some things never change. And so it's worth bringing them up, talking about them, and then getting your guys' thoughts after this video has finished. Jed Spence, for me, is the first problem. I think Jed Spence has a high ceiling. I think he has a high enough ceiling to be a top player. I don't think he's a left back. I said this last season, even when he was on his run, sort of February time, we went to Ipswich and he was brilliant and whatever. He played well. He's had some great moments. I don't think he's a left back. I think it slows down your build-up, personally, and that's just a general observation of him. I'll show you on the tactics board. Okay, so on the board you can see Jed Spence, obviously the left back. This is the team that played the first half and the majority of the game yesterday. The simple problem is having a right footer at left back. I think it slows down your build-up. If the ball comes out to Mickey van der Ven, a lot of the time the Bayern Munich press was actually on Pedro Porro, because they knew that more often than not the ball was going to end up coming over here, because Porro was more capable of going around the outside. Jed Spence isn't. He's not capable enough as a left footer, and we saw that yesterday for the Kingsley Coman goal. He tried to turn onto his right foot. He got tackled. Ball ends up here. Ends up in the back of the net a minute later. So a lot of the time that we become nullified slightly because the ball's coming out to Pedro Porro and the press is constantly around him. And so then Pedro Porro is either having to go over the top, which we saw a number of times he tried to do yesterday, and it didn't work. He can do it, but it didn't work yesterday. And so if you've got a line of defence that can deal with that, then you nullify Tottenham a little bit as well. Or he's going into Paulinho, who simply is coming back, or Bentancur is going sideways, and the ball isn't really leaving this half of the pitch too often, or often enough. That's as well. That's, a lot of people like to dig out Brian Johnson, and I'm not going to sit here and say that Johnson was fantastic yesterday at all. But if the ball ain't coming out to this left-hand side as much, then Johnson ain't picking that up as much either. So that's a simple observation that I've looked at with Jed Spence, that as a left footer, I don't think he's not capable enough and comfortable enough on that left foot to play in this area. I don't think in this Thomas Frank system. Having said that, if he's going to be used as a right back, fantastic. He can bomb forward. We saw it in the first minute or two yesterday, actually, from that left-hand side, where he drove on his right foot and he took it and he ran into the middle of the pitch about here and got brought down. But for me, they need to sign another left back, because these two should be your right backs. They're both capable of doing that. But Jed Spence currently is a makeshift left back. He's not a left back, and that is the first problem that needs to be resolved now for Tottenham in the rest of this transfer window. The next problem is Charlison. I have enough times on this channel given my views on Richarlison, I don't think Richarlison's good enough. I've probably argued with guests on here about my thoughts on Richarlison, and I think as each game goes by, I think I'm probably being proved more and more correct. Richarlison is disappointing me more and more and more. He doesn't offer anything really, and that's just again the truth. I think pound for pound, probably one of the worst signings Tottenham have made. He's played 29.7% of Premier League minutes since he joined Tottenham, which in 3 years is a disgrace. It missed a great chance just before he came off with his last touch yesterday, and you can't rely on him because of fitness. He doesn't get involved in the game. He doesn't hold up the ball well enough. He isn't good enough if Tottenham want to really progress and want to hit the next level. And the big worry is that they have him who's injury prone and you can't really rely on to score you lots of goals. You have Solanke who's looking like he's injury prone and will score you goals, but I mean, last year he got 10, 12 in the league, I want to say. But again, if he's constantly going to be out injured, then you can't rely on that either. So Tottenham need another striker. Tottenham really need another striker. It depends what profile you go for. You could go for someone that's the opposite of Solanke. When we had Kish at Lily White Lab on here, we spoke about Samu Omorodion at Porto, who's probably the opposite to Solanke. Exciting player, young, probably cost you a lot, but having two different profiles, or unless you go with another Solanke type off the top of my head, I'm not sure who, but I'm sure that Spurs will have scouts looking at these guys. But that's Richarlison has to go. Richarlison has to be replaced. I think you can find someone better than Richarlison, someone that offers more than Richarlison. Richarlison offers very, very little, really, outside of winding people up on Instagram and being a bit of a pain. That's how I see it personally. So far, I think we need a new left back because you can't realistically. I don't mind Ben Davies as a third choice, but you can't be having Ben Davies as a backup left back in 2025. I don't think going into 2026, you need to find a new left back who's young, who's fresh, who can play that same role. Because it showed yesterday that we are struggling without having one. You need a new striker. Richarlison's got to go. I don't want it to be Nicholas Jackson. I don't think that's much of an upgrade, to be honest. I don't think either of them would offer too much in this system. I think they need to go out and find a new, fresh, young one that is, 21 and is happy to not play every single game, but can actually impact the team now. But the third issue that I've kind of picked up on is the attacking midfielder. Saar played that role yesterday in the first half. In the second half, Paulinho came off. Bergvall kind of played that further forward role a little bit more. But neither of them are attacking midfielders. Pape Sarr looks lost in that first half for large periods of it. Second half, he was a lot better, I thought, when he was back in that double pivot where he's been very good over pre-season. But yeah, that first half, he's not a 10, so I'm not blaming him for that at all. He doesn't know that role, and that's okay. But Spurs have got to get something sorted. Spurs have to get something sorted. Thomas Frank likes his midfield three to consist of midfielders, hence why we maybe haven't seen Kudus in this role, or Odobert in this role, or Mikey Moore in that role during pre-season. He likes three midfielders that can kind of all do a similar job, but one's able to attack. Pape Sarr can, Bergvall can, but we need someone that can create, and there's a difference. And we really, really lack James Maddison. We really lack Kulusevski. Obviously, Maddison's now going to be out for pretty much the whole season as of the news yesterday. Thomas Frank said last night that Kulusevski's probably going to be out for a long time still, and that's a big problem. This is obviously yesterday. Sarr played in this 10, and it just felt like at times he was lost. He was down here. At times he was down here. He wasn't getting on the ball in these areas here, which is where you need your attacking midfield to get on the ball. And that's not a problem with Pape Sarr. That's a problem with it's the fact that he's not a 10 and isn't used to that. So that's okay. But that's why they need to find an out-and-out number 10. Obviously, as I say, with Maddison out, Gibbs-White obviously didn't happen. Kulusevski obviously out as well. They've obviously got the money there. We've seen with the Gibbs-White bid, that money is there. They've not spent that since. And so a 10 has to be, a striker and a left-back have to be priorities now going into the end of this window. We've got just under a month left, I think. A week till the season starts tomorrow. They have to, or the Premier League season. Obviously, we've got 5 days now until the PSG game, which, I think we'll have to be watching from behind the sofa because this squad is not functionable to compete at the top level this season. This is where Mikautadze comes into it, and many other 10s we've been linked to. But there was a rumour yesterday that we bid for Mikautadze of Como, young Argentinian player. He's very exciting. Had a great season last year at Como. Obviously a player of Madrid, Real Madrid. He was. They've obviously got a buyback on him. It would be a great deal for Tottenham. I don't see it happening. I'd be really excited if it did. But he's kind of what we need. We need someone that's going to play in that 10 role. It's going to create. It's going to score goals, and it's going to drive you forward, because Pape, Sarr and Bergvall, top players and brilliant in their own rights and what they're great at, but they're not 10s. They're not 10s. Being a 10 is very different to being an 8, out and out, and they're not those types of players. So it's really important that Tottenham get 10, whether it be Mikautadze, whether it be Jack Grealish on loan, whether it be Eberechi Eze, whoever it be. Bilal El-Khanous at Leicester, big fan of him. There's enough options out there that Tottenham should be going for. Xavi Simons still hasn't gone anywhere. We spent too long talking about Morgan Gibbs-White, 3 weeks pretty much, 2.5, 3 weeks to want Morgan Gibbs-White. What was going to happen? Was it going to happen? Is it going to happen? Is it done? For it to fall through the way it did, Tottenham have to get something done, because they're falling behind the top. They're falling behind the rest of the top 4 and the rest of the top 6 or 7, really. It is important to say as well that, as much as this has probably been a negative video, it's important to say that we lost to Bayern Munich, who are a good side, one of the favourites to win the Champions League this season, and they are in a good place. Spurs have done a lot of travelling in the last month, been to Korea. Obviously, the time lag and jet lag and all that time difference, it makes a difference. Spurs probably travelled back on Sunday night Monday, and they're probably tired, probably haven't had enough rest, haven't trained as much, all these different things. Bayern Munich have had, since the Club World Cup, they've been on holiday, and they've had 2 friendlies, one last week, one against us, both at home. So a lack of travelling, they're probably in a better place, and they're a better side. So when you take it in isolation, Tottenham lost 4-0 at Bayern Munich. It's not great. I'm not backing up, but there's arguments to suggest why it's happened and why we maybe look so lacklustre. But a lot of these problems also we've seen in every pre-season game so far, even the win against Arsenal, the draw with Newcastle. We know we've needed 10. We knew, because Maddison hasn't played as much because he's been coming back from an injury. Kulu has obviously been injured. We've known for a long time that a 10 is another priority. We haven't seen that. We haven't seen that come in, and that's negligence from the ownership. I don't want to sit here and rant about the ownership, but I think it probably needs to be said that they are letting another manager down. That they've spent, I'm not counting Kevin Danso because that was an obligation which they got in January. Matisse Tell, you can count if you want. I mean, it was an option. Thomas Frank obviously was approving of that option. For some reason, he doesn't seem to be really playing him and Odobert, although as much as maybe they should. We saw the rumours yesterday that they don't need a left winger because he loves Odobert. Gave him 25 minutes or whatever he gave him yesterday, so it doesn't really add up. But yeah, I mean, they bought Matisse Tell, who cost them 30 million. They bought Kota Takeya, cost them 5 million. He's not really going to make an impact on the team this season. Apparently, he's got a chronic issue as well, which is a concern. And how that's got past the medical staff, I don't know. That's why he's out at the moment. Hasn't featured at all yet. And then Kudus as well, 55 million, which was a great deal and one that was really exciting. But that was supposed to kickstart and spur on our transfer window. And it's the 8th of August. The season starts a week tomorrow. And we've done nothing. We've done absolutely nothing. So it's becoming a disappointment. The ownership are failing. Yet another manager. You can go through. I think the one they probably backed the most financially in one summer was probably Conte. They gave Mourinho £85 million, and they gave money. He also lost Kane and ended up winning something. And Thomas Frank has lost Son, Maddison, and Kulu practically this summer. For Son's obviously not coming back, and those two could be out for Maddison definitely pretty much the whole season. And Kulu, it wouldn't be a shock if he's not back till the new year. And you're not replacing him. That squad that we got up. I'll get up again here. 1 second. I'll get up there. That squad is not capable enough to compete at the top level of the Premier League, of the Champions League. The Champions League will kill that squad, and then they will subsequently lose a lot of games and struggle big time in the Premier League as a result. And don't get me wrong, there's good players in there. Romero, Van der Ven, Porro, Bentancur, Palhinha, Kudus. It's a decent side. It's a decent side that on paper, if you look at that side, can compete to maybe get in the top 7, 8, 9 in the Premier League. But Richarlison needs to be replaced. Brian Johnson, I like Brian Johnson. He offers goals. I'm not sure what else he offers. As I say, maybe that with Jed Benson, that's a problem. You need someone that's more of an overlapper, so maybe he can come in and get in those areas. But he's not a wide winger. He's being deployed as a wide winger. I don't really get it. Kudus, I think, is exciting. Porro, Romero, Van der Ven are good. Bentancur, I'm pleased with. Sar's had a decent pre-season. I'm quite excited by him. But there's problems. There are problems. You can get Bergvall in this team, but we're still missing Udogie. We're still missing Dom Solanke. Maddison and Kulu in this area here. So they need a 10. They need another striker. They need another left back. And we play PSG in 5 days' time, and we have none of these things. The ownership are letting down yet another manager. They're hanging him out to dry, and they're letting him fail. Daniel Levy came out and made these comments that he wanted to win the title. He wanted to win the Champions League. That was 4 weeks ago. Since then, he's been on the overlap with Gary Neville. Didn't say anything that exciting. Kind of backed up the points that he wants to be successful and he wants this and that. Well, this is not how to be successful. This is an identity crisis. Quite clearly, they want to be something that they're not. They're acting like a club that are mid-table. They're acting like a club that finished 17th. They want to be a club that wins the title, and there's a very, very, very big gap, and that gap is only growing the slower that they act. It was brought up to my attention, probably a lot of Spurs fans' attention yesterday, that Spurs have 3 players on over 100 grand a week. I think that number becomes 5 with, I imagine Kudus probably is on that, and I think Palhinha as well. But before that, it was Son's gone, Timo Werner's gone. They've got Maddison, Romero, and Kulu, I think, are the 3. For context, Arsenal have 16, Chelsea have 15, even West Ham have 6. I think Newcastle have 7. If you don't spend big money on wages and things, you don't attract the best players. If you don't attract the best players, you're probably going to be a pretty average side, and you can't expect them to go and win titles constantly. So maybe Andrew's a miracle worker. I'm not suggesting he was, but maybe he was a miracle worker. You could argue that was the first time we've been favourites in a cup for a long time, so maybe it was expected, but maybe he was a miracle worker. Maybe with the resources and what was given to him by Daniel Levy, which is pretty much peanuts compared to a lot of the other clubs in the Premier League, he managed to win something. And so I feel sorry for Thomas Frank. I'm not sure this isn't on Thomas Frank at all. This is clearly an ownership issue, and they need to sort it out, because if they don't, then that first day of the season next Saturday, regardless of what they do in the next week, I think that first day of the season next Saturday, I think the Levy out brigade, myself included, will be loud and in numbers, and I think that will only grow throughout the season. If Spurs don't have a successful season, which they are setting them up to not have one, personally, I think. But that is my rant over. That is this video over. If you enjoyed, hit like, subscribe, comment. What do you think? What did you make of yesterday? What were your key takeaways from yesterday? As I said, hit like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Make sure that all of those are done. Once you've done that, it'd be amazing if you could follow my YouTube channel, which is underneath me at THFC Frank. I'm hoping throughout the season I might try and post a few bits, some tactical sort of analysis videos, bits a bit like this. But yeah, follow SpursRelated, follow myself on YouTube, TikTok, whatever. Either one would be greatly appreciated. As I say, let me know what you think about Daniel Levy. Let me know what you think about the result yesterday. Who needs to come in? Who do you want Tottenham to bring in? What's needed? And what are your thoughts on Richarlison, Jed Spence, and Pape Sarr in those roles that I spoke about before? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching. Come on, you Spurs.